Hey fellas, welcome back to Brothers in Air. I've been gone for a while here now, a few months from the YouTube scene and making the videos, but I'm back, doing better than ever, feeling better than ever, and just too busy, man. I was just too busy, overwhelmingly busy, and had some personal stuff going on with health and death in the family and stuff like that. So, but like I said, doing better, feeling better than ever. And so let's get right into it. I got some cool stuff to share with you guys today concerning the 22 caliber flash wood here. So like the title says, this gun is a TACK driver for real. And well, here's a 75-yard group, little squirrel headshots, 75, heavy winds. And I did a lot of velocity testing with the hybrids. So this was at 770. And we'll get into that in just a minute, but here's a couple groups at 100 yards with the hybrids, and that was at about 820, 825, right in there. So the gun is able to shoot them sub MOA all day consistently, and from the pellets to these hybrids, this thing is just a TACK driver. It's consistent. It's actually the most accurate gun I own out of all the 6 PCPs that I own currently, and I love this gun. So anyways, let's get into it. My setup here just a little bit so you guys know what I got going on. I've went and took the UTG scope off and put the 6-24 Hawk AMX 30 scope on there, and it's illuminated, side focus. And I got a vortex bubble level on there. This is the scope I was using on the Flash Pup originally, but the UTG just didn't accommodate the side shot scope mount very well. You know, everything's really congested and you don't have much space in there unless you're using a very narrow ring. And I didn't have any narrow rings. So needless to say, 6-24 AMX. I've got the Donnie FL tattoo, the shroud removed, the barrel band modded, and I removed all the grease and oils. I got a dry graphite tune going on in the action and in the trigger assembly of the gun, and I polished up the trigger sears and stuff a little bit, and improved on the trigger that way a little bit. And also I've got the HEMA regulator installed. And one of the things that I did, you know, when tearing into the rifle and doing different things, the porting in the rifle, let's see here. The valve port was at 156 thousandths, and then the transfer port was at 146 thousandths, and the barrel port was at 166 thousandths of an inch. So you can see there's some stepping in there and some variation in the sizes between the three. So what I did is I opened them all up to a straight 170 thousandths. So more of an efficiency mod, better and efficient use of the air, being that everything's a straight shot in there, and rather than, you know, with the stepping in the different sizes. So like I said, more of an efficiency mod than a power mod, but I did gain 12 to 15 feet per second per shot with the same tune. Once I opened it up to, like I said, a straight 170 thousandths. So, what else? The other thing I did, if you're familiar with the platform, you'll know that the exhaust valve, the exhaust spring for the exhaust valve, the spring in there that holds your poppet closed in combination with the high pressure air, it's held in place inside the valve housing with like a hard plastic composite cap that has a bunch of little holes through it, and it screws into the valve body, and that's the backside stop and what holds your exhaust spring in there, your valve spring. So what I did is I just opened up those holes, and I can't remember what size exactly, but I opened them up as big as I felt comfortable with, still leaving enough meat in there between the holes so that the piece could still, you know, structurally be integral and support the high pressure air and the forces and the spring itself and everything. So if anybody was curious, I could, you know, once I'm into the gun again, I could measure and tell you exactly what I opened them up to. But that one too also was not really searching for power or more power, so to speak. more of an airflow mod, just to allow more air to travel more freely and faster from the plenum in the humiregulator, from the plenum and on through the exhaust valve and out up to the barrel. So those are the mods that I made. Oh, and also I did put a swivel down here so I could have a sling on here. I've got the UTG 360 bipod on there, which will accommodate a stud in the backside. And oh, here's another thing I wanted to point out. I had spoke on in one of my videos about, talking about the changes within the action and stuff like that. But one thing that I wanted to point out today, what they've done, and also a couple guys have even commented and wrote me and said, hey man, is there something wrong here? I've got some slop in here, and I don't have a constant tension on my hammer against the valve. So what they've done is they've gone with a more kind of like a triple S setup, a short stiff spring, and it's like a dead blow system now. So out to about 4.5 to 4 3/4, I believe, turns out on the adjustment screw, the preload adjustment screw inside the hammer. You get about 4.5, 4 3/4 turns out, and 5 for sure, and then you've closed that gap completely, and you would no longer have that dead blow setup. But most of your tunes aren't going to involve cranking the adjustment screw all the way out 5 turns anyhow. So anyways, the benefit to this is that instead of a constant pressure and force against the valve pin there, after you take the shot, it's able to bounce back in the, there's that little gap, that little bit of play in there. It's able to bounce back off of the valve pin, losing a bunch of energy, and so that when it comes back up forwards again and smacks onto the pin, it no longer has enough energy to open it. So that way you don't get double taps with your hammer, and you're not wasting air that way with hammer bounce. So let me see here if I can kind of hold things secure. Yeah, it's kind of hard to hear. Well, I know what I can do. This is what we'll do here. So, like I said, the Flash Pup Synthetic and the Flash Wood, which are their two newest models. First was the Flash and the Flash Pup. They both have the same dead blow hammer set up this way. There's a couple differences in the action between the synthetic and the wood, but as far as the hammer and the strike goes and everything, it's the same. But anyhow, listen. You hear that? Just like an FX Impact would be or something, where you see guys tip their gun and say, what's that little clickety clack I'm hearing? Well, that's the hammer. It's able to move. You got about 1/4 inch of dead blow play in there. So that's a huge improvement, and that's awesome. And you're able to squeeze a little bit more efficiency out of the rifle, and also have just a slight touch less recoil when taking your shots. So definitely an improvement, and this gun is just very consistent, and like I said, I love it. So if you remember, oh, here's another thing quick. Although I don't own anything currently that costed over $800, I have had a couple guns in the past in the over the $1,000 mark. So I guess you could say high end. But so I want you to know that my opinions are not biased just to the lower end guns or to HATSAN guns or anything like that. And recently I had an opportunity. I got invited to a range south of here, and I've never been able to do anything like this, so it's super cool, man. It's about 12 or 15 guys, and I was kind of just felt like a star, I didn't know any of these guys even knew that I had a channel, but the guy that invited me must have put them on to Brothers in Air, and so it was just awesome, man. The camaraderie and hanging out and everything, we had a blast. But not one of these guys had a lower end gun of any kind. I mean, these guys were decked out. We're talking $3,000 and $4,000 setups, Day State and FX, and I saw some Brocock, some Bantams, what is it, Bantam, and Compatos and different things. And there was only a couple 25 cals, but needless to say, I brought the original Flash Pup and I brought the Flash Wood with me. And let me just tell you guys, with the Flash Wood here, I was dusting these guys off. Man, it was a blast. I was just dusting these guys off. And there's a big difference between a guy that's shooting every day just about and a guy that's, you know, out at the gun club every third weekend, you know, shooting his gun. You know, there's a big difference between the guy that has all that trigger time in versus the other guys. And you know, I've shot many impacts and different day state guns and, you know, Red Wolves and stuff. And I actually had an opportunity to shoot one of the new Dreamlines when I was down there. So, you know, beautiful gun. You know, these guns are worth the price. And, you know, there should never be this high, low-end battle that you see going on within the forums and stuff like that between guys. That shit drives me nuts. But anyways, beautiful guns. You know, the ability to shoot these guns so incredibly well. For me, what I noticed immediately is the lack of recoil when taking the shot, and the ability from shot to shot to use the same consistency as far as trigger pull and hold and everything like that. And the HATSAN guns, you know, kind of have a classic, you know, stiff hammer springs, heavy hammers. And even though they say, you know, you see some guys say PCPs have no recoil, they do. They all do. And HATSAN has some of the heavier recoils on the market, in my opinion, from what I've used and shot. And that's just my opinion. But anyways, that makes a huge difference with the shot. And now I'm rambling. But I just wanted you guys to know I'm not biased. And I would love to own an Impact or something like that. So if anybody out there wants to send me one, I will gladly rock and roll with that thing and make some videos even, you know, or whatever. I'm just kidding, but anyways, I was dusting these guys off. It was a heck of a lot of fun, man. But they were impressed, you know. There wasn't a guy out there that wasn't impressed with the Flash Wood in 22 caliber. They were actually, most of them, blown away with the consistency and the repeatable accuracy. And like I said, I kind of felt like a star of the show. And I was just out there rocking and rolling, you know, with my $800 setup or whatever I got versus $3,000 and $4,000 setup. So anyhow, like I said, the gun is such a tack driver, so consistent. And rather than just sit down and make a video about that, what I did is, like I said, you know, I even made this video, a couple other videos. My head just wasn't in the right place. I had, you know, too much going on, too much stress. My heart wasn't in it, and it was showing in the footage, you know, so I just deleted all that crap. But anyways, here's what you can expect from the Flash Wood. I'm zeroed at 55 yards, so, you know, you can pretty much expect to see thumb hole groups. Here's some, what's this here? It's 75 yards. We got air arms and then the hybrids. But here's some more 55-yard groups, you know, thumb holes. Old Chad had to pull a shot on each of them, of course. But anyways, rather than sit down and make a video just showcasing the accuracy of the hybrids or the gun itself, I figured I'm just gonna put together a bunch of footage that I have from all my tuning and testing and practicing, and all of it'll be with the side shot, and it's from various different days and times and stuff like that. But I think you guys will be able to get the picture. And I've shot many sub-MOA groups with the hybrids at 100 yards. And man, them things are wicked. They conform to many different bore sizes, chokes, twist rates. They're very universal across the board. I've had great luck with them even in break barrels that I own. So usable hunting accuracy from the hybrids in everything that I own, which is something you don't find in any projectile. Especially when shooting a slug type projectile in guns that were not designed to shoot slugs. So I stated in the last video when I was talking about when we did the pellet testing with the wood, and I said I was going to test out a whole bunch of slugs next, and then I was going to lock in a slug tune or a pellet tune. Well, lo and behold, the hybrids came out, and they're just rocking and rolling, you know, awesome. And I discovered something. So I was originally tuned at about 860 feet per second, regulated with the Humareg, but 860, 870 with the Air Arms 18 grain DIABOLO pellets. And so I did all my testing with the hybrids, and I tested them all the way from like 730 feet per second up to about 820, 825, which is where I've settled at now in my tune. But I tested them at all these different speeds and everything, and I was fully prepared to lock in this hybrid tune, you know, with the hybrids, and leave the gun set up that way, and just really work it and learn it and get everything down pat, and just have this be, you know, my hybrid gun. Lo and behold, something came over me, and I said, well, you know what, I don't even know what speed they're shooting at, but I'm just gonna see how the 18 grain Air Arms do. So I'm zeroed at 55 with the hybrids. Load up a mag of the Air Arms, and I get to shooting at 55, and man, I'm within a half inch, you know. So I was amazed already. I immediately realized that the trajectories were very, very close, and so I did some playing around and messing around, and I've now come up with a dual tune for the gun, which I've never been able to do on any gun. You know, you set up to a projectile, and then if you want to switch to something else, you are re-zeroing, you know, you're maybe possibly even retuning for a different velocity because the projectile is heavier or lighter, and the whole process can entail, you know, a little bit of work. So I've never had that where I've been able to just swap between two projectiles and be that even close to that close in as far as point of impact with the same tune. So you have a much higher ballistic coefficient, more than double with the hybrid as opposed to the DIABOLO pellet, the 18 grain Air Arms. So if you were to compare apples to apples and you were to shoot both of these projectiles at the same speed, you would see a more loopy trajectory in the pellet's flight path than you would in the hybrid. But we're not comparing apples to apples. We are comparing the FX hybrid at 820 feet per second versus the Air Arms DIABOLO 18 grain pellet at 925. So we've got roughly 105 feet per second of difference between the two projectiles. And we've also, like I said, we've got a huge difference in our ballistic coefficient between the two. But because of that difference in feet per second between the two projectiles, that's why the trajectories are so close. So I don't want anybody to get confused and say, wait a minute, how could the DIABOLO pellet possibly fly along the same trajectory as the slug? The reason is because the difference in speed. And it's not like this in any of my guns, you know, besides this one. There's so many variables. Twist rate, bore size, choke size, barrel length, all kinds of stuff. It just so happens that in the flash wood, the difference is 105 feet per second roughly, and that's what it takes to bring the trajectory of the slug right down, well, vice versa. You know, you could say we're speeding up the pellet or we're slowing down the slug, but either way. So we know that ballistic coefficient is, in layman's terms, our projectile's ability to cut through the wind and retain its energy downrange. So I want to talk about, just for a few minutes, how cool this actually is, and also how cool the hybrids are, because there's different situations that would call for either of the two, being it the pellet or the hybrid, and being able to switch readily between the two, having a mag each loaded up and being able to just readily switch between the two based on wind conditions, range, intended game, all that stuff is remarkable to me. I've been having a blast with this thing, doing some squirrel hunting a while back, you know, because like I said, I've been set up this way for quite a bit now, for a couple months. So anyways, I'm just going to use the Hawk chair gun program to lay out a few of these things for new guys. And if you don't want to, you know, listen to this stuff, you know, and I'm rambling to you, just maybe I'll list in the comments a little time slot for where you can get right to the shooting and then you can just see how the hybrids and the Diabolos are doing out of the gun. But I wanted to really break some stuff down for some of the new guys, because a lot of guys write stuff to me and say, wait a minute, if the gun is shooting the same accuracy with the slugs and the pellets, why would I ever spend the money on the slugs? They're so much more expensive. And they are. They're considerably more expensive. But, so reasons like that, or guys will say, why, the gun isn't designed for slugs, why would you shoot slugs? And they're, a lot of times expense is the big key word. But I want to show you the differences here in what these different ballistic coefficients and the results are, between the two. So that you new guys can see just how cool this is, and when and where you could use these in the different situations, as far as wind, the size of game that you're shooting at, like I said, and stuff like that. So anyways, let's take a look at the trajectory for one thing of these two. Now, the blue is the FX Hybrid Slug, and the green is the Air Arms Diabolo. And throughout this, you're going to see on some of them that there is a pink or purple line shooting off in a different direction through the screen. And just disregard that. That's just for the other setups. And I entered in some bogus figures just to get them up and out of the way. And so we're only going to be paying attention to the blue and to the green, with the blue being the FX Hybrid and the green being the Air Arms Diabolo. So let's look at the trajectory here. I'm zeroed at 55, which that's leaving me with a near zero at 12 yards. And so I'm zeroed between 12 and 55. And at about 32 yards is where the peak of the trajectory is, and I've got about 1.25 inches rise from zero. So let's take a look at the drop. At 75 yards, the projectiles are dropping 4 inches, and at 100 yards, they're dropping 12.5 inches. So just to put that into perspective, from the zero line, from the bore line, that projectile is actually dropping 12.5 inches by the time it reaches the target at 100 yards. So one of the cool things, you can see there are some slight differences in the two trajectories, and especially at distance when you get out there past like 75 to 100. So one of the things that I found I was able to do is just to give the turret a couple clicks, and that will put me right on with the hybrids. Or being that this is not a first focal plane scope, and the reticle is actually behind the magnifier, so when you change magnification, you're magnifying the image, but you're not magnifying your reticle at all, your crosshairs and your mil dots and stuff. So with each different magnification and each different size of what you're looking at, you find different yardages for your mil dots and for where your projectiles will hit for point of impact based on your mil dots and their spacing. So take a look at how close these are. I'm shooting at a steady 10x all the time usually with this scope, and it's also good for ranging purposes, and I just generally don't go above 10x ever in any situation. But needless to say, let's say I was shooting I'm set up on the hybrids, and that's what my whole setup revolves around. But I've got the dual tune going on, and at this moment in time, I want to use a pellet. We've got a no wind situation. I'm shooting at distance. It's an 80-yard shot, but there's no wind. So what I'll do is just either, like I said, give it a couple clicks and I'm on to the pellets, or I will change from 10x down to 9x, and that'll bring me very, very close. So take a look at the two reticle pictures here. And like I said, I use Hawk chair gun to do this. The ballistic program, which is my favorite and what I use for all my crap. But look at the two, how close they are. Look at the mil dots and the corresponding yardages between the two, and how close they actually become when I jump down to 9x and switch over to the Diabolo pellets. And now let's take a quick look at the velocity loss over range, okay? So you guys can get a picture here of what this higher ballistic coefficient is doing for us. So with the FX Hybrid Slug, we're leaving the muzzle at 820 feet per second, and we're all the way down about 680 by the time we get to 100 yards. And with the Air Arms Diabolo pellet, which is the green one, we're starting off out of the muzzle at 925, and by the time we get to 100 yards, we're all the way down to roughly 615 feet per second. So that's a total loss over a 100-yard distance between the two projectiles. That's a total loss for the FX Hybrid slug in the blue of 140 feet per second. So that 22 grain hybrid slug only lost 140 feet per second over that distance from 0 to 100 yards. Whereas the DIABOLO pellet, that's 18 grains, with its much lower ballistic coefficient, actually had a total loss over from 0 to 100 yards of 310 feet per second roughly. So you can see the hybrid actually is retaining much more velocity over distance. So that also means more energy carried over this distance. So let's take a quick look at the foot-pounds. And same thing, FX Hybrid in blue, Air Arms DIABOLO in green. And we're leaving the muzzle with the hybrid at about 33 foot-pounds. And by the time we get to 100 yards, we're impacting the target with 23 foot-pounds. And with the DIABOLO pellet, we're leaving the muzzle even a foot-pound higher, right at about 34 foot-pounds. But by the time that pellet gets all the way out there to 100 yards, we're down to about 15 foot-pounds. So that's a total loss of only 10 foot-pounds with the hybrid slug versus 19 foot-pounds of total loss with the DIABOLO pellet. So almost double. You know, we're a foot-pound away from being double of the foot-pounds lost over distance with the pellet. So clearly you can see when taking those 75 to 100 yard shots, you can see where the hybrid, especially if there's any kind of wind going on, you can see where the hybrid would come into play. And that's when you would load up a hybrid, versus your pellet. And now, lastly, let's take a look at the wind drift. Now, I set this up based on a 90-degree wind, straight 90, 15 mile an hour wind. And again, the FX Hybrid is in blue and the Air Arms DIABOLO pellet is in green. But let's take a look at the wind drift with a 15 mile an hour wind, which is a good wind. And this is based on a steady constant 15, which, you air gunners know you don't really find constants when it comes to the wind. But we're going to base it on a constant wind, crosswind, 90 degrees, 15 miles an hour. So the FX Hybrid slug at 50 yards is drifting about 2.4 to 2.5 inches. And then we get out to 75 yards with the slug in this 15 mile an hour wind, and we're drifting about 5.4 inches. And then when we get out 100 yards in this 15 mile an hour wind with the FX Hybrid slug, we're drifting about 9.6 inches. So take a look at the Air Arms, the 18 grain DIABOLO. At 50 yards, we are drifting about 5.7 to 6 inches. So more than double wind drift with the pellet versus the slug. And for me, that has been the highlight of the whole show when it comes to the slug game, and now especially with these hybrids, is wind drift. I'm just out there taking shots at distance, just eating through the wind, and it's awesome. We're able to do things now that I wouldn't have dreamed of, 5 years ago. I would have thought it wasn't possible or wasn't going to happen. So exciting times for us, my friends, my brothers. But anyways, let's take a look. 75 yards, we're drifting with the pellet 13 inches versus only 5.4 with the slug. And then at 100 yards, we're drifting 23 inches with that pellet. So now at 100 yards, we're working with a 12.5 inch drop and a 23 inch push to the side with the pellet, So you can see where in windy conditions versus we're only pushing 9.6 roughly, 9.6 inches of push with the 15 mile an hour wind on the slug versus the 23 with the pellet. So you can see how it's just incredibly awesome to be in the field, able to switch between the two. Like I said, based on wind conditions. So that's pretty much it, man. Dual tune, hybrids, and Air Arms. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm really going to work on my rambling, you know, and talking, but I really have designed these videos and will continue to design them for new guys and guys that are just getting into this platform is probably leading the game right now as far as a first-time buyer for guys that are getting into the sport. And it's an incredibly simple and straightforward platform to tune and work on and replace seals, whatever, you know. So as you know, I'm a huge fan, and I'm gonna continue to crank them out. I got a lot of cool stuff. I got the schedule worked out a little bit where I'm not so incredibly busy, and I've got a whole week of work off here, and we're just gonna do videos the whole time. So all right, enjoy the shooting, and to my brothers, I salute you, and look forward to some steady flow here in the future. But enjoy the shooting footage. Like I said, it's all with the side shot scope cam. Oh, here's another thing I almost forgot. In testing the hybrids from, like I said, about 730 feet per second all the way up to 820, 825, what I found was that the groups really started to close up right around 770. Yeah, right around 770 feet per second. The group started to consistently close up where I could get 1.5 to 2 inch 12-shot groups at 100 yards. And they just continued to shrink from there as I went up in velocity. And then I settled on, like I said, about 820, 825 feet per second with the hybrids. And now they're shooting sub MOA at 100 yards. So, and one thing you won't ever see, I could bust out the TACK driver bags, and with the pellets and the hybrids, you know, I could shoot 55 and 100 yards, 3 5-shot groups, and just, you know, wow the air gun world with this pellet on top of pellet accuracy. But that's not real life, you know. That's not how I shoot, and I don't even like it when I watch a review of a rifle, and that's how they're exhibiting the gun's accuracy. You know, I prefer to see the gun in a more real-world situation, you know, especially being that I'm a hunter. You know, we're never out in the field lugging around our sandbags and stuff, so I shoot off the bipod with a fisted hold, you know, under the buttstock, sometimes on top of the bag, but that's it. It's either I practice offhand or I shoot with the bipod as I would in the field. So we're not going to have any redos or retakes or anything like that. I'm just going to mix up this footage from all my testing, and I'll list the velocities and stuff accordingly, you know, on top of the footage. So anyways, to my brothers, happy shooting, and enjoy the footage of a TACK driver for real. Peace out. Let's get to it, man. 12 shots. right, that was 12. That one shot, that was me. I pulled that one. But hot damn, you see that? That's in some wind at 55. I told you. TACK driver for real. Let's rock and roll. Hopefully the wind will stay rather consistent throughout the string, so that I can really show you guys not only that it takes about half as much holdover as the Diabolos at this distance in this wind, but also I'd like to show you guys just how nice they can group up too. So let's give it a go. 55 yards FX hybrid. I just wanted to show you guys what I got going on here. It's about 16 degrees outside, so more than appropriate enough for the old Iceman to get busted out. So this is what I'm working with here, man. I got all my gear in here, got everything set up, little heater and everything, so we're nice and cozy up in here. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys where I'm at and what I got going on here. It's a little too cold, man. 16 degrees is that's a little too cold just to be out here in the open, not moving around, just sitting on the bench. So I'm snuggled up in here like a little baby. But anyways, man, let's get to shooting. Man, I'm out here having a blast. But let's shoot a 12-shot group of the hybrids at 55. All right, let's rock and roll. 100 yards, FX hybrids up first. Wind's picking up a little here. Yeehaw! All right, that was 12.
Me, I always tell the truth, even when I lie.
Let's see how my holdover skills are here for, you know, doping for the win. All right, let's rock and roll. 100 yards. One down. Gonna shoot him again. We got him. We took him down. These slugs are wicked. It would have knocked him back, but there we go. Now you can see if we can take out this squirrel here at the bottom. And test out my holdover skills here a little bit. Bingo.